The U.S. Federal Reserve keeps its interest rate steady but signals more hikes are on the way. With that potentially widening South Korea's rate gap with the U.S. even greater, the Bank of Korea is set to decide between taking another pause or hike. South Korea posted $6.2 billion in auto exports last month, the highest figure for a month of May. Starting today, the South Korean government will be holding daily briefings on the safety of Japan's Fukushima wastewater and seafood products amid lingering public concerns. Good afternoon. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to freeze its interest rate, putting the brakes on a string of rate hikes. But the U.S. Central Bank hinted that more hikes are on the way amid lingering concerns over inflation. Our Moon Arirang starts us off.
The U.S. Central Bank has kept its interest rates unchanged for the first time in 15 months, but says more rate hikes are likely before the end of the year. Following the Federal Monetary Open Committee's two-day meeting, it issued a unanimous statement on Wednesday that rate hikes would be paused at the 5 to 5.25% range while the economic situation is assessed. This freeze follows 10 consecutive rate hikes as the Fed aggressively responded to the worst inflation the United States has seen in 40 years.
Looking ahead, nearly all committee participants view it as likely that some further rate increases will be appropriate this year to bring inflation down to 2% over time.
Fed officials say that further hikes are likely to bring interest rates to the 5.5 to 5.75% range before the end of 2023. Despite more rate increases, Fed officials cast a more optimistic view of the economy, but say curbing inflation takes longer in a robust economy. The economic growth outlook for this year more than doubled to 1%, up from 0.4%, while the unemployment rate is projected to rise to 4.1%, which is lower than March's estimate of 4.5%. In May, the Consumer Price Index climbed 4% on year, which was the lowest annual rise in over 2 years. However, excluding volatile food and energy prices, the core inflation rate remained well above the Fed's target of 2%.
So I think if you look at core PCE inflation overall, look at it over the last 6 months, you're just not seeing a lot of progress. It's running at a level, over 4.5%, far above our target, and not really, moving down.
Personal consumption expenditure, which measures price changes of consumer goods and services, rose 4.4% on year in April. The Fed's earlier prediction back in March that PCE would see an on-year rise of 3.6% at the end of the year has been raised to 3.9% in reflection of the latest data. U.S. stocks pinballed following the announcement, with investors bracing for another interest hike later this year. Moon Arirang, Arirang News.
With more rate hikes almost certain in the U.S., there are mounting concerns in South Korea over its rate gap with the U.S. widening even more. Against this backdrop, the Bank of Korea will decide between another pause or a hike. Our Lee Hyun has this report.
Concerns are rising as the interest rate difference between South Korea and the U.S. may expand as the U.S. signaled more increases later this year. With the Fed's decision to keep the base rate unchanged for now, the rate difference stays at 1.75 percentage points, an all-time high gap. However, with Fed officials revealing that rate hikes totaling 0.5 percentage points between now and the end of the year, the gap is expected to surpass 2 percentage points, even up to 2.25 percentage points if South Korea's central bank continues to freeze the rate. This could spell crisis for South Korea, with a weaker won against the U.S. dollar possible and with foreign capital outflow. Now it's up to the Bank of Korea to focus on taming anxiety by freezing the rate or increasing the base rate to prevent any uncertainties resulting from an exchange rate crisis. The head of the Bank of Korea, Lee Chang-yong, said previously that Korea will not mechanically respond to a rate difference, adding that more rate hikes may come in the near future. However, economic conditions in South Korea are making it difficult to raise base rates. The GDP growth rate in the first quarter of this year barely avoided a negative figure, while the trade deficit has been in the red for the 15 straight months. The BOK also already lowered its economic growth outlook from 1.6% to 1.4% amid China's weaker-than-expected reopening and the sluggish recovery of the chip sector. Meanwhile, South Korea's Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said during a meeting on Thursday that a rate freeze by the Fed was already expected by the market and the government.
Uncertainties remain as to how major countries will decide on their monetary policies. The government will keep watching for any uncertainties and closely monitor the market and strengthen the management of vulnerable sectors.
During the meeting, Chu also pledged to thoroughly manage the potential risk of project financing in real estate, as more rate hikes could trigger a crisis for non-banking financial companies as well as a complete financial crisis. He said related institutes are cooperating to monitor project financing firms around the clock. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
South Korea posted $6.2 billion in auto exports last month, the highest figure for a month of May. According to the Trade Ministry, eco-friendly cars drove that increase, with $2.1 billion of exports, a 64% on-year jump. Thanks to the surging popularity of eco-friendly cars, the value of the country's auto exports has broken the $6 billion mark for 3 straight months. Auto production in May also recorded a more than 24% increase, surpassing 380,000 units and recovering beyond pre-COVID-19 levels. This comes as the supply of vehicle semiconductor has returned to normal, resulting in an increase in vehicle production volume. The highly anticipated government-backed savings account for young people is now accepting applications. Banks across the nation are offering annual interest rates of up to 6%, aimed at boosting financial security among the younger generations. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
A much-anticipated South Korean government-backed bank savings program, first announced in March this year to help youths gain economic stability, is now open. According to the Financial Services Commission, 11 banks, including Nonghyup, Shinhan, Uri, and Hana, began accepting applications for the Youth Leap account at 9 a.m. Thursday. With the Youth Leap account, users can save up to 50 million won, or around $39,000 over the course of 5 years, with a maximum deposit of 700,000 won per month. The government will make contributions depending on the amount deposited and the account holder's personal income. Those contributions could be as much as 24,000 won per month, while the interest gained is tax-free. All 11 banks said Wednesday they would offer a maximum annual deposit interest rate of 6%, including fixed base rates and preferential interest rates. Those aged between 19 and 34 with a total annual income of 60 million or less and a household income below 180% of the median income are eligible. For two-person households, the monthly income must be 6.22 million won or below. For three-person households, income is capped at 7.98 million won. Foreign nationals living in Korea that meet the requirements can also register and receive tax-free interest income, but will not be able to receive government contributions. Those eligible can apply through their banking apps between 9 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
To keep the public up to date and prevent the spread of wrong information, South Korea has begun its daily briefings on Japan's plans to release its Fukushima wastewater into the sea. First Deputy Chief of the Office for Government Policy Coordination Park Gu-yeon told reporters on Thursday that the government will be closely monitoring Japan's test run of its discharge facilities, which began on Monday. Park further explained that the Korean team of experts that returned from on-site inspections last month is carefully analyzing related data. Meanwhile, citing the results of the government's radioactivity monitoring so far, Vice Fisheries Minister Song Sang-keun stressed that there is no meaningful difference in concentration levels in the coastal waters of Korea before and after the Fukushima nuclear disaster, and that Korea's fishery products are safe to consume. The Fukushima wastewater issue was once again hotly debated on the last day of the parliamentary questioning of government officials. Also debated were policies for disabled. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-woo has the highlights of the session.
Rival lawmakers grilled government officials on issues directly pertaining to South Koreans' lives, and among them was the People Power Party's Kim Ye-ji.
A person with a disability myself and also a list member. I'm going to ask questions on the government's role and direction regarding policies for the disabled.
Kim asked Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, representing the government at the parliamentary session, about the Yoon administration's direction and plans for policies for the disabled.
We are working hard to increase the related budget. We are also working on expanding support for the disabled's health, care, and personal budget system. We will actively communicate with those with disabilities to carry out our assignments and develop various policy alternatives.
And as was the case in the previous two sessions of questioning, another hot topic was Japan's plan to release wastewater from the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant.
Japan has chosen the cheapest and easiest way to make up for the nuclear plant disaster. I think this will set a bad example globally. What do you think?
If it's done in a non-scientific way that harms the people around the world, there are international systems to discuss and file complaints, for example through the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea.
Other questions asked involved the government's aftercare for those affected by the Itaewon tragedy late last year and the need for the protection of press freedom. Lee Si-woo, Arirang News.
Marking the 24th anniversary of a maritime clash between the two Koreas, President Yoon Suk-yeol says South Korea will respond to North Korea's reckless provocations without a moment's hesitation. In a Facebook post on Thursday, Yoon paid respects to the South Korean soldiers who fought to defend the country against North Korea's maritime offensive in 1999. He noted that the South Korean Navy went into battle without hesitation and subdued the North's troops. The South Korea overpowered North in 14 minutes, killing at least 30 enemy soldiers and destroying 10 vessels. 9 South Korean soldiers were injured with no deaths. Yoon expressed his gratitude to the soldiers currently serving in the country, while vowing not to forget those who gave their lives for freedom, peace, and prosperity. Marking Chinese President Xi Jinping's 70th birthday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sent a congratulatory letter praising Xi for, quote, remarkably strengthening China's national power and building a comprehensively well-loved society. According to the North state-run media outlet, Kim expressed his belief that the struggle for the prosperity of China will surely end with victory. Kim wished Xi for success in what he referred as Xi's important and responsible work in leading China. The North Korean leader also sent a flower basket to Xi. Recently, North Korea has been seeking strengthened ties with China, its traditional ally, amid international sanctions slapped on the regime due to its nuclear and missile programs. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to visit China this weekend to normalize communication channels amid rising tensions between two world powers. The visit comes 4 months after his visit was called off due to the Chinese spy balloon incident in February. Lee Sing-jae has more.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was set to visit China to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart in February this year, only for the trip to be called off last minute after a Chinese spy balloon was shot down over U.S. territory. 4 months later, the top U.S. diplomat is now set to visit China for talks with high-ranking officials in Beijing from June 18th to 19th. The upcoming visit comes as Washington looks to normalize communication channels amid ongoing tension between the two countries, which also includes 2 military-related incidents in recent weeks. According to U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, Washington has three main objectives during his visit. During the talks, Blinken will look to establish communication channels that are open and empowered to discuss important challenges, address misperceptions, and prevent miscalculation. The spokesperson added that Blinken will also raise a range of issues on both regional and global matters, while also exploring potential cooperation on transnational challenges in areas such as climate and global macroeconomic stability. While Washington does not believe this visit will result in any major breakthroughs, the main goal is to prevent any potential conflict. With the visit to Beijing, Blinken will be the first U.S. cabinet official to travel to China under the Biden administration and the first from any government since 2019. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
A South Korean diplomat has been elected to serve as a judge of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. The country has now won a seat on the body for the third term in a row. Seoul's Foreign Ministry announced on Thursday that Lee Ja-hyung, head of the ministry's International Law Department, gained support from more than two-thirds of the voting member states. His term will run from 2023 until 2032. The ministry welcomed the decision, saying this will not only upgrade South Korea's status in the field of maritime law, but also expand the country's role. The tribunal, based in Hamburg, Germany, has jurisdiction over any dispute concerning the interpretation or application of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. It rules on government maritime issues such as sea border disputes and preservation of the marine environment. 1 in 4 families in South Korea has a pet, and latest trends show those pets are seen as family members, with owners taking care of them as they would for their children. Our Kim Jong-un reports.
Welcome to a kindergarten for dogs. From 9 a.m. till noon, all dogs of different shapes and sizes come in to spend another day. One of the largest kindergartens for dogs here in South Korea, this place offers various activities conducted by trainers and medical assistants from professional vets.
More than 130 dogs come to this kindergarten for daycare, exercise, and other activities. It might not be cheap, but customers say it's worth it.
Leia is my beloved daughter and my best friend who understands me better than anyone. We are very satisfied with the training she gets here in terms of socializing and etiquette.
The kindergarten principal said he has seen many changes in pet culture over the past few decades.
In the past, people used to buy puppies impulsively and abandon them if they didn't behave. But nowadays, more and more people adopt them as part of their family.
I consider my dog as a family member for life, so I want to give them the best possible care, just as I did to my children and my grandchildren if I have some in the future.
According to this year's Korea Companion Animal Report by KB Financial Group, 81.6% of owners said they consider their pets as family members. The report also said pet owners spend an average of $120 per month. That's more than $1,400 per year.
The overall cost of raising a pet has increased, starting with adoption, nurturing, and medical treatment. There's also huge room for funeral costs to grow in the future. All of this spending is due to the fact that many people deem pets as part of their family.
However, in South Korea, pets are still considered property according to the law. Experts said changes might be necessary as they are becoming a bigger part of many people's lives. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Belarus, President Alexander Lukashenko on Wednesday said the country has begun accepting the delivery of Russian tactical nuclear weapons. The weapons are shorter range and less powerful than strategic nuclear weapons and could potentially be used on the battlefield. The delivery marks the first time since the fall of the Soviet Union that Russia has moved such weapons outside of its borders. They will be stored in Belarusian nuclear storage facilities. Russian President Vladimir Putin has justified the move, pointing at European countries that host US nuclear weapons. Lukashenko also noted that Belarus would not hesitate to use the weapons if it experiences aggression. Russia, meanwhile, has maintained that it will retain control of the weapons. To Greece, where at least 79 people have died and hundreds more are missing after an overloaded boat carrying migrants capsized off the country's south coast. Over 100 others have been rescued. The boat was spotted on Tuesday in international waters. According to the local Coast Guard, the boat refused help, possibly due to fears over Greek practices pushing migrants back. A few hours later, it capsized. The boat was bound for Italy from Libya and was carrying mostly men in their 20s. Survivors say that most women and children who had been on the ship died. There had been further inside the boat at the time of the capsize. It's speculated that some 400 to more than 700 people were aboard the 20 to 30 meter long vessel. Now, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees on Wednesday said that a record 110 million people around the world have been forcibly displaced from their homes. According to the UN Refugee Agency, the war in Ukraine, conflict in Sudan, and refugees fleeing Afghanistan has pushed the number to a new high. 62.5 million were displaced within their own countries, while 35.3 million were refugees fleeing abroad. It's feared that the figure will increase further, as the agency's chief said that global emergencies had increased as much as fourfold in recent years. The number of displaced people was 108 million at the end of last year. Forcible displacement usually occurs as a result of persecution, conflict, or human rights violations. And finally, a letter penned by classical composer Mozart over drama in his love life could fetch between $300,000 and $600,000 US when it goes under the hammer in July in an auction hosted by Sotheby's in London. The two-page letter was written in the summer of 1782, when Mozart was 26 years old. It shows the Austrian composer asking a friend for advice over a misunderstanding he had with his future mother-in-law. Mozart was reportedly worried that she would send the police to take his fiancée away and ruin his reputation. Fortunately, the couple got married shortly after the letter was written. They stayed together until Mozart's death at the age of 35. While Mozart is known to have written many letters, it's rare to see them go to auction. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Well, I have been telling you the same weather information for the past few days, passing rain with thunderstorms, and it's another repeat for today. Scattered storms could bring hail to some parts of the country, and 5 to 60 millimeters of passing rains in the forecast, so you could get soaked once it starts to rain, so please keep a small umbrella handy. Temperatures should gradually warm up as we head into the weekend, and by Sunday, we'll be seeing sweltering highs of 32 degrees Celsius here in the capital. But back to today's forecast. After comfortable morning temperatures, highs are going up fast to the upper 20s in most regions, and when it does not rain, we'll be under partially sunny skies. Air quality will be decent nationwide, but the ozone level is rising during the day, and UV rays will be high to very high this afternoon. Tons of sunshine will be in effect for much of Korea from tomorrow. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see rain early next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.